Welcome to this episode of From the Principal's Desk, where we look at issues facing Lutheran school principals today. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the principal at Mount Calvary Lutheran School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my co-host is Mike Sheeman.
Hi, I'm Mike Sheeman, principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio, and I'm kind of excited about today's topic, which is a little weird to think that you'd be excited about teacher evaluation and observation, but I love seeing our teachers do what they do best and working with the kids and sharing God's love with them. So I think it's going to be a great topic and a great discussion today, Rob.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And we have some of the best teachers in the entire world, and to be able to watch them and help them grow is one of the joys of the principal profession for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Rob, do you mind maybe starting off just talking a little bit about what's your theory behind teacher observations, evaluations, and process? Maybe just to learn a little bit about what you do at your school?
Yeah, so I've always viewed teacher observations as learning opportunities. I'm not going in anybody's room as a gotcha. I'm not going in anybody's room to tell them how bad they are. I'm in there because I already know you're a good teacher, right? You've put your heart and soul into this profession, and I'm in there to see the great things you're doing, highlight those, and then give an outside perspective on some of those things that maybe we have blind spots to that I can always help improve, whether that's hey, here's this article that might be helpful, or hey, I noticed, you had some struggles with this. Tell me about that, and talking through some of that in dialogue. And maybe it's, hey, do you want to go to a training on this? That looks like an area that I see you expressed interest, and I know it's something we could work on. And
Mm-hmm.
it's never meant to be a one and done. It's a continuing conversation to help them improve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the way you approach that continuing conversation. I feel the same way that teachers, in some cases, it's easy to think of an evaluation as a checkbox item that, hey, the board makes me want to do this, so I'm just going to, get it done. But it's a lot more than that. It's a lot richer than that. That an evaluation is really just the summary of all of the things that you've seen the teacher do over the past however long. Really, I think teacher evaluations begin on day one as principals go through and kind of get a feel for what's the climate in the classroom. What do the teachers do on a day-to-day basis? Because the evaluations where you say I'm going to observe two lessons and I'm going to write things down and then form a document are really a lot less useful to teachers. Having received those myself from time to time, I don't want to give those to my teachers. I want them to know that I've got a real feel for what's the culture they're creating, what are their procedures, and the best way, in my opinion, to do that is to be present frequently and regularly in the rooms.
Now, when you're in the teachers' classrooms, there are times when we're in there to observe, and there's times we're just in there to be in there. So, do you differentiate those with your teachers? I know you send emails when you're in the room, like you leave the room, hey, this was really great, or hey, I have a question about this. Do you tie that into your observations too, or are those just kind of spur of the moment visits for you?
Well, for me, pretty much anything can get into can support some of the conclusions I'm making about the teacher. So, while I may not be in the room for that purpose, anything that I see for me is fair game, and I love to kind of keep notes frequently throughout because I've had it before where I've failed at that, and you go to sit down and write an evaluation, and you're thinking, man, I just don't recall a lot about what's going on in the classroom. But for me, on my phone, I use my notepad and I just do a quick name and date of the teacher whose classroom I was in and jot down a few things as I go. So it really helps to build that capacity of what you're going to be writing in your document later.
That's a great idea. Using that as kind of work you're doing ahead of time to add to that document later.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I started when I became a principal is we did a monthly kind of scored walkthrough. Hey, I'm looking for these things, and they're just going to be yes, nos, and I'm going to write down what I saw, and that was it. And those, at the end of the year, I said, okay, were those helpful? And I got an interesting comment from my teachers, and maybe you've had a comment like this from yours. Well, we really kind of liked it, but it made us really nervous, right? Because you always came in with the iPad and we were always getting scored on it, and it made us so nervous. And so, how do you build that culture that this isn't meant to be scary, this isn't meant to be intimidating, this is meant to be helpful?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I think for me, it's always been a matter of that it shouldn't be a surprise when I walk in the classroom. It should be part of the school culture I'd like to be a part of is that I'm in there all the time, and they do see me on my phone a lot, but they know what I'm doing because they get the follow up with what I've been doing on my phone. But um, I know it's been sometimes my first few years as a principal, you'd walk into a classroom and the kids would be, oh, hi, Mr. Sheeman, and I'd be the biggest distraction ever. And I still kind of am for maybe the first couple of weeks in school, but by about now, which what we're rounding the end of September, at this point, when I walk in a classroom, it's no longer disruptive. And the kids just keep on working, and I get to see the teacher in their raw environment because just like for kids, when an adult walks in the room, they act differently. I don't want that for my teachers, that when I walk in the room, they act or do things differently either. I know that they do. I know it's just kind of human nature, but I want it to be as natural as possible. That when I'm in the room, it's just a normal event that happens every day at our school.
That's a really good point because when we do these observations, if you only do one a year and you tell the teacher, hey, pick the observation time, you're going to get hopefully their best lesson. But that's not going to give
Hmm.
you a full picture because if they're showing you their best thing, then one, how are you going to help them grow if your comments are just like, hey, that was a great lesson. I loved everything about it. If you haven't seen anything else that maybe didn't go as well. And then
Hmm.
how is that going to capture a full picture of everything they do? As we've talked about on this podcast before, if you're only in the room 40 minutes out of the whole year, you have no idea how that teacher's day actually is or how they actually are as a professional. So you really got to get in there frequently.
That's right. That's right. And so many evaluation tools that are out there, as they should, they don't just assess teaching and curriculum. As a Lutheran school teacher, there's a lot more that goes into the profession, the calling that we have here in our Lutheran schools. And so I do want to be looking at the relational aspect of things. I do want to be looking at professionalism. I want to be looking at their commitment to the ministry as a whole. And all of those things take a lot of time to really fully establish where the teachers are at with that. So really being there with them and walking alongside them in order to later evaluate them is critical. And then they know that you've taken the time to give something that's authentic, that's helpful, and hopefully reflective.
That's a great point. Now, teacher observations are always more than just a set of comments and scores on a piece of paper, right? So, do you have
Yep.
your teachers score themselves on any of these items to begin that conversation or kind of get an idea of where they think they are before you do your observation?
Yeah, I do. Actually, my process is there's a number of different things that feed into it. So we start with, of course, the meeting to let them know that they're being evaluated. But I have a full rubric that I use that I give the teachers and say, these are the areas where I'm going to be formally kind of assessing you, if you will. And for me, scoring was always so subjective. And it frustrated me early on in my career when I did have a teacher say, why did you rate me at this level instead of this level? And I knew it, but I thought if I could prepare them a little bit, it might even be helpful. So using actually some of the Charlotte Danielson material, I've created a rubric where the teachers can see where I'm going to be scoring them, but then that's a part of it, as is their self-evaluation. I feel that for them to reflect on their profession is an important piece of this too. So they speak into that as well. And I tell the teachers, if there's anything that I haven't seen that you want me to see, now's the time. Over the next evaluation cycle here in the 2 weeks or whatever it is that we're doing this formal piece, feel free to like brag about yourself. Man, get rid of that Lutheran humility for a minute. And if you had this amazing lesson that you were so proud of, show me. And similarly, I ask them the question when I'm in your room, is there anything that you want me to be specifically targeting? Is there something that you want me to look for to, maybe you want some deeper reflection on classroom management or differentiation, who knows what it is. Let me know that, and I'd be happy to share additional feedback with you. What does that look like for you, Rob?
So, for me, a lot of it is those kind of day to day little comments. Hey, I noticed this. This was great. Hey, this didn't go so well. Can we talk about that? And then at kind of formal evaluation time, and I like to do that usually a wave of them in December and another wave of them in March, usually. I know those are busy times for people, but it gives us information that we can use to help the teacher grow before it's kind of too late for some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, if you are at a school where you maybe have some contracted teachers that are not called, that gives you information if you need to make difficult decisions regarding hiring, right? And
Absolutely.
so, and that's becoming more and more common in our Lutheran schools is contracted workers instead of called workers. But
Yeah, it's a
then,
sad trend, for sure.
yeah, but then a lot of it is similar. We use a modified Danielson framework that includes faith integration. And what I'll do, and I'll get yours from you too, we can include those in the show notes probably for people so they can see copies of kind of templates of what we use. And
Definitely.
a lot of that is starting that conversation. And the Danielson framework is interesting because gone are the days of the, hey, here's your 25 things. I come in as principal, circle 1 to 5, write a comment, and put it in your file. It's very much a back and forth, right? The teacher fills out stuff and lets you know what you're going to see before you go in to see it. And all of that information is really useful because we get into the nitty gritty and we get in to see the planning process and we get in to see execution. And then we get an opportunity to talk about, okay, here's what we said we were going to do. Here's what we did. Where did it fall apart and how do we help you improve?
Right. Right. And contrary to what a lot of people, I mean, maybe even myself, had thought at one point, is teachers are craving this feedback. It's funny because if they don't get some sort of an evaluation through the year, you'll hear that saying, yeah, well, I've never been evaluated before. And I think they long for the affirmation of the things that they're really doing well. And I think to a degree, there's maybe a little fear of receiving some feedback, but my experience has been when I share that feedback, they're thankful. But I don't share the feedback alone. If there's an area of growth that they need, we work that into a goal. And then part of their professional development plan is to then find resources, which I help them do to realize their goals and to grow in that area. And in some cases, it's a matter of, you know what, I'm not great in this area, but I know that, you know, the teacher up the hallway from me is amazing there. So how can I use that teacher in their area of strength to support me in an area where I'm struggling? And it builds the other teacher up as well. So using your staff and the gifts God's given you is really an amazing part of this community of Lutheran schools.
Yeah, that's one of the many, many things that make us special, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
there's so much to brag about, and we as Lutherans sometimes, like you said, shy away from that. Now, you
Mm-hmm.
have an interesting quote here in the show notes that we're working off of about the 3-minute classroom walkthrough. Do you want to tell everyone what that is?
Sure. So one of the resources I picked up early on as an administrator was a book by Carolyn Downey and a bunch of others, and it's called The 3-Minute Classroom Walkthrough. The subtitle is Changing School Supervisory Practice One Teacher at a Time. It's a really good read. It's an easy read, and there's the premise is basically what we've been talking about, that to get real assessment, you need to be present over a longer period of time and not just coming in for your 2 45-minute observations every year. And so one of the quotes that stuck out to me in this book was, it says, as the frequency of the principal's classroom visits increased, so did teachers' perception of the principal's effectiveness. I know sometimes it's easy for teachers or for people to think, oh, the principal, they don't really know what's going on. They've been out of the classroom now for how long? So they don't get it anymore. Things have changed. But if you can show them that you are with them, you're alongside them, and that demonstrate that you have an understanding of what's going on in the classroom, it builds greater capacity for those conversations that they know you get it. You're not just throwing theory at them, you're understanding them and walking a mile in their shoes. So great book. I would really recommend it if anybody's looking for material. The 3-Minute Classroom Walkthrough has some great stuff.
And that's just such a great topic to take away, right? The more often you're in their rooms, the more often you give feedback, the more often you recognize the work they're doing, they're going to go, hey, I think you're doing a pretty good job too, which is always nice to hear.
Mm-hmm.
We are in
For
kind
sure.
of an interesting time for Lutheran school principals because we have in the past a lot of principals were teaching principals kind of the whole time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so observations were kind of a checklist. And through professional practice and through new ideas and through kind of the changing nature of our Lutheran schools in a way, we've moved away from that where now this is part of your duty as principal, right? It always has been, but it's gotten a little more meaty than I think it used to. So when I was teaching, I can count on one hand the amount of times I was observed formally or informally.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a similar experience to that, Mike?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
So if we can help anybody out there know that this is an important part and get better at doing this more frequently, that helps all our schools.
It does. It does. And then one other thing to bring up too, I think, Rob, is that we need to send the message that we want our teachers to succeed. The evaluation is not a gotcha tool, like you said earlier. I feel though, that there are times when we have teachers who are struggling, or teachers that really might need to know that they're not effective in a particular area and need some support. But the evaluation's not really the tool to bring that up with them. So just like I coach the teachers, the report card is not the place to say to a family, your kid might need to repeat a grade, or surprise. You don't want to surprise a kid on a report card. I don't want to surprise a teacher on an evaluation. So if there's something that needs to be addressed with them, you build a lot of professional capacity to bring this up, and then use the evaluation tool as a reflection of how's it going, so that nothing is a surprise. I think that's really important.
Yeah, teachers are already nervous enough about the evaluation, and if the sole reason you're evaluating any of your teachers is to remove one of them, then you're really approaching it from the wrong way, right? It's
Yeah.
meant to be a growth opportunity. Now, Mike, do you have any kind of quick tips for anybody listening out there on how, what, like one thing you have done or learned in your principal career that's been really effective for you for observations that they could kind of take and implement on Monday?
Yeah, I think the thing for me that I had to do when I started doing evaluations was, I would say, well, I want to get into every class frequently, but I don't have the time. And that was really, frankly, it's an excuse. We all have the same time. It's a matter of how we use it. And so what I ended up doing was, just like I would book a meeting in my calendar, I booked times that I would intentionally go into the classrooms. That translated as part of my culture, that I don't need to do that anymore, because I know and I'm tracking myself of how often I'm in all these classrooms. But make sure it happens frequently and make it a priority. Your teachers will thank you for it. What about you, Rob?
For me, it is the fact that I approach a lot of this as, I don't know everything, right? I don't. And so
Mhm.
I will sit down and I'll say, okay, guys, here's the observation tool we have. Do we like it? Is there anything we want to tweak on it? Tell me how you think we could best grow you and your capacity through this observation, and being open to some of that. Now, that doesn't mean I'm always going to change it, but it's nice to include them on the back end of that, so they know that it is a partnership and it's not just a tool coming from somewhere to kind of judge them.
That's really well said. I fully agree with that. That's having their feedback in the process. That's fantastic. I think everybody loves to be heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is so much more to cover, just like everything. And I think I even heard something about professional development plans in there that we're going to have an episode on, and maybe even staff issues that we're going to have an episode on. But I think we might have covered enough about evaluation and observations for today.
Yep, I agree. Hopefully, it just got people thinking and started a reflective process there. And like Rob said, we're happy to share some of our resources as we're able. So feel free to reach out. And God's blessings as you serve his people and serve his teachers in your roles as administrators.
Blessings, everybody. Have a good week.